I first learned about today's guest, Matt Weldon, from Drawn and Quartered, a Wednesday night show on a channel called Blacklist Universe, hosted by Mike Miller and Edwin Boyett. Matt is what I might call an artist's artist. In the same way you might say Dave Attell is a comedian's comedian. He does things with his art that leaves me dumbstruck at times. His seemingly effortless line work today, for example, has roots in his early training by tracing illustrations in game magazines. This man thinks in silhouette, executing a line only when he sees it in his mind's eye. Weldon, like myself, is a huge fan of fighting and action games. You'll hear us briefly mention Tekken 7, for example. He's a King player, while my main is Leo. But being fans of fighting games and being artists, there are similar lessons to be learned about mastery of one's craft. Namely, that there is no top to the mountain. We will never reach a point where we say, I've learned everything there is to know. Akuma in the anime Street Fighter Alpha roams the earth seeking someone who's strong enough to challenge him, like a restless spirit of destruction. But Akuma is a monster. Mere mortals like ourselves only live 70 years on this earth, plus some change if we're lucky. If there's one lesson I learned and continue to ponder from this talk with Matt, it's never to get comfortable, to always be learning something new. I had a lot of fun talking with Matt, and I look forward to the next time. Before I get to the interview, I'd encourage you all to take a browse through the description links below, where there are links to Weldon's latest campaigns. As for myself, I'm uploading this on Tuesday morning after I've regrettably canceled my Kickstarter campaign for Mary Sue. I don't really feel like talking about it too much right now, but since people are speculating on why I might have done such a thing, I will say that my reason is basically because I'm burnt out from the ecosystem of indie comics Twitter. It's far too toxic, and it's kind of taken my drive away to do campaigns in general. I sort of feel like a sponge that's absorbed too much gunk trying to clean a filthy bathroom where people keep peeing and pooping all over the place. I just want to wring myself out and disinfect for a while. Figure out what I'm going to do next. I mean, it's hard enough to make comic books, even harder to make good ones, but having to produce a book alone without much backup and deal with jerks trying to sabotage your projects at the same time, it's too much for one person. Most people can't handle these fights alone, and I see that most bystanders just don't want to get involved. I don't blame them. I wouldn't, except I like a clean bathroom. So I'm just going to have to find a different path up this mountain. None of this means I'm quitting comics or stopping, art or storytelling or anything like that. I'm still taking commissions. I'm still a freelancer, as far as I know. I just need to take some time and fall back in love with my craft. If that means not earning as much of a living from it, that's okay. I'm still going to offer my books the traditional way through my online store. I won't be taking pre-orders for them through campaigns, but instead I think I'll sell finished books in the foreseeable future. In the meantime, I'll thank everyone who defends me against the jerks throwing tomatoes at my back while it's turned. I want to respond to the jerks, but honestly, there's only so much I can do by myself against those people whose, it seems, their full-time job to piss people off online in the name of the organization. My job is to make art and make people happy, as far as I know, sort of the inverse of what those people are doing. No wonder we want to stop each other. To that end, I hope you guys enjoy this conversation I had with Matt, and I hope I can continue making good interviews, good art, and stories for everyone to enjoy. I'll talk to you guys later. Make sure the file starts recording. Okay, it claims it's recording. All right, so this is PODLOMATIC episode 39 or 40. We got Matt Weldon today. I'll do the proper intros after, but please introduce yourself, sir.
Good evening. Good morning. It's morning for me, even though it's at night time because I just woke up, but I feel great. My name is Matthew Weldon, and I'm the artist on Punchline, Sideshow 66, which is up on Indiegogo right now. I think there's about 10 days left. Yeah, I just been scrambling around in the comic books for about 15 or 20 years. And I just have, a couple little credits to my name, Image Comics, other little things here and there. But yeah, that's
Well,
pretty much
those are not small things, but I'd like to actually go through your whole bibliography and everything. But
Oh, crap.
no, I mean that with full respect.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
What was strange to me is like I don't follow American comics too much, and I'm kind of giving myself an education as I talk to everybody around here. But your stuff is so advanced, like your art-wise especially, is like, how have I not heard of him? I'm thinking like, but that's, I'm just so ignorant to the American market. But like, I'd love to know about how you ended up where you are now, what projects you're working on, how you started. I barely even know where to start.
Yeah, that's totally cool. Yeah. Man, you just reminded me of an article that was written like probably over 10 years ago. I mean, it was kind of a funny article, but the guy who wrote it, he had seen my stuff scattered around DeviantArt and some other places, and back when forums were a thing, and like little art forums.
Yeah.
And he posted up a bunch of things, and he just wrote it, and it was cool and all. He had basically started off the article like, there's some artists out there that are super famous and exposed and all this other stuff, and then there's some that seem to be more they're more rare and I can't remember the exact wording, but it was like particular, and he kind of worded it in a way that kind of alleged that I tried to keep myself rare, and he liked that, and it was cool, and I didn't mind either way, but that I the stuff that I put out and the stuff that people got to see, was so enjoyable, and he said he enjoyed it, but that he liked the rarity of my stuff that was out there, and it was kind of cool. I started probably back in 2005-ish, and just playing around, drawing, trying to acknowledge that I needed to start getting online. And 2005 that was 15 years ago, and even then, internet and online submissions were not unheard of. Like, you still were mailing in submissions back in those days. I mean, Marvel and all those big companies, they still weren't up to speed on the online stuff. And I was just posting on forums. I entered an art contest to get your stuff published in the back of a pinup gallery in an Image comic book here and there, and I got in a couple of Image comic books, just a couple of pinups here and there. And then one of the guys I won a contest with was just like, "Hey man, you want to draw a book?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." So the next thing I knew, 2008, 2009, I drew like a 160-page graphic novel for Image Comics, and then even then, anybody who knows, I didn't get paid $1 for it, but it was great. I couldn't believe it. The exposure, I was so happy, just to see my stuff on shelves and have the work actually out there. All that stuff's, it's known. But one thing I'd like to brag about on that one was it was a more of a kids friendly graphic novel, and it was named Best All Ages Graphic Novel of 2009 by the MTV website, and it even got on the G4 channel briefly. So I mean, little fun things I haven't thought about in forever, but that's kind of a start. I worked on a number of things after that, and then crashed and burned here and there to kind of skip forward ahead, and then just trying to build myself back up, keep making comics.
I found that talent and sort of marketability are completely different monsters. The trick, it seems, is to get people to remember your name. And
Oh yeah.
also, of course, to look at your, like now I've familiarized with your figures and everything so much that I mean, I've been collecting your stuff for a while, and then I look through my folders once in a while and I say, wait a second, that's Weldon. And so it's interesting to see that your art becomes your signature after a point.
Yeah, I always wonder that. Whenever I start drawing wacky stuff, like I haven't drawn or played video games forever, but just recently I've been getting into trying to up my content for video games and anime stuff. And we drew Sonic yesterday. So Sonic the Hedgehog because of the movie,
Mhm.
just a little themed drawing show. And I always wonder if people recognize me, whenever I try and do different stuff, but I appreciate that. That's very encouraging at the same time because, everybody wants their own style and it's always nice to be equated or associated with certain styles. People are like, hey man, you really remind me of this Burn Cat, from the 70s and stuff like that and all this other stuff. But yeah, it's all good.
I mean, it could be something as simple as one of the things I want to ask you about, for instance, is that your line work is so strong, and it's almost a signature in itself to see like it just preferences, I would guess.
Oh yeah.
I guess I don't have a plan exactly. Like I have a huge list of things I want to ask you, but specifically, let's say right now I want to jump into the way that you draw, for instance. Do you use? It's hard to tell because your lines are very dark. I'm not sure if that's digitally
Mhm.
assisted. Do you work with really dark mechanical pencil or just
Oh, good.
ink? What do you? What's your
Good
preference?
question. Yeah, I always, and that's another thing too, is whenever I post things online, I'll scan them in, and a lot of stuff that I do is sketchy pencils, whenever I post stuff.
Oh,
But I do take it all into Photoshop and then darken it, and I often get questions about, you know, how you're doing this thing or that thing, and then I always eventually get to, after talking with this person here there, I get to the impression that they're like, oh man, this looks inked, and it's not. I
oh,
do throw it in Photoshop and darken it because oftentimes, but there's another little trick in Photoshop that even when I do ink things, I take it in and I bitmap it,
yes.
um, just to make it a much smaller file. And it, it pains me a little bit time to time to just take uh, that really crude and textured image of a scanned drawing, and then just flatten it and bitmap it. So I mean, that's a little heartbreaking at times, but it's common, and I have to do it here and there. It cleans things up at times too. But yeah, the way I scan things, even when I scan pencils, I like to darken them to make it and confuse everybody as much as I can.
Well, it was only when I was. Luckily, the images you post on Twitter, which I'll leave a link below for everyone listening, you have to check out his stuff. They're so high res that when I really zoomed in and was looking at them under like a microscope, I'm like, oh, this texture belongs to a pencil. And then I started to realize, okay, your ink work is over here and it has a very distinct look, and your pencil work is very distinct too.
Nice. It's always
There's,
funny too because if anybody really downloads and looks at any of the pencils stuff, oftentimes you can see where I erased a hand or a foot or a leg
yeah,
that's close to where the other one was that was completely off. Because, my style is I don't like to build things up if I can help it. I just like to try and aim for that right line the first time. And, I don't always get it the first time. I often don't get it the first time.
mhm.
But if I can help it, I just like to do a finished drawing the first on the first line the first time. But it's fun to see.
Um, when I was younger, we did something called contour drawings.
Mm, yeah.
Did that? Did you? Well, I don't know if it was called that universally, but the trick was not to pick up your pencil basically and to have the strongest single line that's possible. Is that,
Oh.
did
Well, I've
that,
never heard of that before. The contour drawing, that's totally unfamiliar to me, but it may be what you're what I'm describing to you. That's kind of interesting.
well, all right. So for instance, I mean, it's said that with handwriting, for instance, you can tell a lot about a person's
Yeah.
personality, like by their handwriting. And also, I would think it's similar with drawing. My stuff is very sketchy and anxious, and so when I look at my, especially like my ink drawings, I can see, it's very lots of hair and sketch and short abrupt lines, and I can tell that I'm always like stressing out when I'm drawing. But that can also lend itself well to like cross hatching, which is a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
But your lines are so confident and mellow, and it's really interesting to see. Like, I was going to ask about that actually. So you just go right into the. It's almost, you can see the image before you put it down. You know where the lines are going to go.
Sometimes, yeah. And you know, and when I get, sometimes I'll just draw a face and I'll have the rest of the paper to work with. And at times I'll draw, I'll get the face down, and then I'll sit there and I'll look at the piece of paper, and sometimes I'll try and animate the figure in my mind to get a good pose I'd like to attempt. And it does not often work out the way I kind of imagine it. But if I so much so much more often than not, I'll get something better. You just gotta you gotta be open, or I do, whenever I'm trying to lay something down. But just getting a really good, confident figure. I'll never forget the first time somebody told me that, man, your lines are confident, and I didn't never heard that before, and it was only a few years ago. It was in the last 5 or 6 years, I believe. And I was like, huh. I grew up in a very, very small town, and I I am 39 years old right now, so we didn't have internet all through high school. And growing up, it was just so difficult to even find material to draw from. If I got a hold of, a little video game pamphlet from somewhere, or a magazine from a store, man, I remember some video game magazines were like the most amazing thing I'd seen growing up. But I didn't know how to draw or build things up. I just thought that people just drew these things, and that's what I tried to do. I just started drawing lines. I traced magazines forever, growing up.
Oh, traced.
Yeah, like I ever growing up through junior high, I was tracing everything you could imagine. And then that just kind of got me into the I guess, I mean, I'm guessing this. I haven't thought about this my entire life, but I don't draw the cross on the face ever.
Yeah.
I just try. And when I say try, I'm not like the most amazing. And you'll never I'll rarely ever just go straight to ink. I'm not that confident. I do have to pencil things, just to make sure before I start inking. But it's all kinds of wacky. I appreciate that when people tell me that, when they say, you have confident lines, and it's all about another thing that I'd heard growing up. It's like less is more. Sometimes, I like getting just sometimes a good outline of a character, and maybe just going in and penciling in a couple of details in the figure. I like drawing in silhouettes and just getting a really cool action figure, or just a cool standing figure or whatever. And then I'll go in and fill in the details. That's kind of my approach.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it obviously works. Anybody who sees it will know. And no, I don't mean to be kissing your butt or anything. Like, I genuinely get a lot of pleasure looking at your stuff. What about tools? Do you have any favorite?
Oh, this is controversial, right? My favorite tools, and I've tried to recently too, as I've interacted with other artists, to experiment with different tools. It's all about traditional for me, and I love the idea of getting a really nice tablet and messing around with the brushes and the functions that Photoshop or Clip Studio or whatever that I hear about. Just a nice tablet to play around with, but all I've ever known is pencil and ink and even trying to wander about and find new brushes and pens. It's always been just the Walmart special for me. I figured a long time ago, I didn't have any art shops in my neighborhood, and I was having problems with the pens bleeding on the paper, just spider webbing out everywhere. And so I just went to Walmart one night, bought a whole bunch of pens, and found the best one that didn't do that. And I just been messing with the Pilot G2, the 7, the 5, and the 10 or the 1, and I've been doing that forever. I mean, I used to draw with ballpoint growing up, because you get a really cool pencil-y effect with those too. But yeah, and I try to get away from them. I try different things, and I keep coming back to them. It sucks because they take a little bit of time to dry, but the results are just
I actually understand that. I use the G2. It's 0.38.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I seen that one. That's skinny. That's super skinny.
It's the juice. Like, I have it right here. I have 10 of them scattered all over the apartment, and
oh snap!
Like, I cannot go in any room in the house and not find one. But no, I totally understand what you mean, because they glide on paper beautifully.
Yeah.
I've also found that paper type matters with ballpoint versus felt tip, because I also use Micron or Sakura microns.
Ooh, I just heard about those the other day.
They're great. I've been using them forever, but they suck on vellum paper. And vellum paper works extremely well with ballpoints. It's the texture. So the more friction the paper has, it grabs the ballpoint tip, but it only frays and damages felt tips. So you want to use a smooth paper for a felt tip.
Man, that's interesting. It's kind of sad too, because I feel bad, because as I've recommended these things to people, they come back to me and they're like, "Oh man, they don't draw over pencil very well." And that, man, I didn't really think about that. Sometimes I don't really pencil that much, so I don't really know. And it's kind of sad too at times, because those pens can be intermittent, and from one pen to the other, they can act differently, even though they're like the same pen, same size. But a lot of people, they come at me, and I'm just like, I will tell you that when the thing that stood out to me the most with those pens, and just to kind of finish that issue, is whenever you go to erase them, like a number of other pens that I've tried that dry a lot faster, whenever you go to erase them, nothing comes up. They will stay completely black, and it's almost like a raised little embossing too every now and then when you run your fingers over it after it's dried. I love it. It will not fade ever.
That is extremely valuable. That's one of the biggest strikes against the Sakura pens.
Oh yeah,
when you erase, they vanish. But there's little trade-offs, like they have pressure sensitivity a little bit. You can sort of, you can feather the line just a little bit. And of course, with ballpoints, for anyone listening, if you don't know about this, ballpoints have no line variability. I mean, they can if you're tricky.
Yeah, it's tricky, but you're right. Yeah,
But that also has its own quality. I mean, it all boils down to preference. There's no right or wrong way to draw.
Sure, yeah, and that's why I play with the different sizes too.
Yeah.
The 5, 7, and 10. Man, that 10, I just been really getting into that 10. And if anybody, most of the things that people comment on, and they say, "Oh, you have, I appreciate your line work and stuff like that." Man, that 10, it really puts it down. I love it.
I'm gonna have to look for that. I didn't know they make those.
Get some good outline, and the cross hatching that I'm getting with that 10 lately, holy crap. It's from a 5 to a 10 or even a 7. Even though they're the same pen, they're so different whenever try and draw with them. But
I'm sold. I'm not going to look it up right now, actually. I don't want to be
yeah,
jerk. Like,
just whatever you guys do, don't. I mean, you can get some of them at Walmart, and just to kind of Amazon, they sell them, or even eBay. Look at both places. You can find some deals for some packages of those pens.
yeah. Let's see. You have worked with, all right, so with pencils then, do you have a preferred hardness?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't really have a clue about hardness. It's been all mechanical pencil for me forever. And I want to say that it's always been whatever I had laying around, which is usually a 5 or a 7 mechanical pencil. And I'm really I hesitate to really put my ignorance on display, but Mike got onto me the other day and was like, "You don't know what HB stands for or what HB means?" And I'm like, "No, I don't really know what that means."
That's I guess that's Mike's personality. It's whatever you're comfortable with, I guess. But part of the reason I always try to ask, especially penciler and inkers, is because when they erase their pencils, if they erase their pencils, and when you ink on top of your pencils, for instance, if I use a dark pencil that's like a 2B to a, God forbid, a 4B or something like that, but B being the soft kind, in case anyone's wondering, it makes darker lines with the same amount of pressure. When I ink on top of those, I almost can't tell what's the difference between ink and pencil, which drives me crazy.
Yeah, and it's always wacky. I'd always wondered what it'd be like to draw with. I had some original work just given to me the other day from some famous people, and they draw with freaking blue pencil or red pencil, and I'm like, oh goodness, I don't know. I've never attempted anything like that. And how that stuff erases. But I mean, with scanners today.
Yeah, with most scanners, actually, they don't pick that stuff up at all. So they don't erase any of that. And for that reason, actually, I ended up converting to a 5H pencil, which is fairly hard, and that creates a light line, if anyone's wondering. So you can barely see it. And when I ink on top of that, I don't have that inking problem. And when I scan, it doesn't show up anyway. When I play around with it in Photoshop, so I don't have to erase. I skip that step. I think it's pointless, and it's a waste of time.
It's so weird. Like I have, somebody was throwing a bunch of stuff out, just a few months ago, and I came into like a huge cache of like all different kinds of HB hardness leads and stuff like that, and I would probably get, persecuted for this, but I tried to find all the same sizes, and I just threw them all in the same little container. So like I have numerous different versions of HBs and leads, and they're all the same size, but I threw them in the same container so I could use them. I feel horrible about that. But I'd never known anything like what the purpose of any of that would mean,
For our purposes, for comics, I don't think it would really matter.
Oh, that's a good
most
point.
Most of the time. HB is the center of the road in terms of hardness. Like, you've heard of number 2 pencils.
Oh, yeah.
So for school, Scantrons and all that stuff, those are usually 2B pencils in terms of their darkness.
Oh.
But anyway, it doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters, this is my position for all art, is I only care about the results. I don't care what an artist does to get there.
There you go.
And really, if the art moves me and it looks great and I want to keep it, like, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I've just recently, I like posting sketches,
Yeah.
If I could just like sketch all day every day. It's not that I like pencil more than anything else. I do like getting a good inked result, get the satisfaction of a finished product. But for me, I strive so much to get a really cool figure, just a really cool action shot, some good anatomy and a good figure, and I'm on to the next thing, and I'm just trying to do more and more and more. And then I never thought that I would do it, but I have so many things that I'm finding now, that I forgot about. And so I'm like, man, I got to really slow down and focus on finishing some of these things, because I have stacks and stacks of just random figures and illustrations of characters over the years. It's nuts. My mind is shot these days.
Well, that also ties into a question about sort of what kind of training do you do, or what kind of training have you had, and what do you do these days?
Oh man, that's a good question. Um it's so funny going back to like tracing way back when I was younger. I Over the last 5 or 10 years, you know, I'd be online, just see something cool, and I'd want to recreate it, or I would see, this figure, and I'd be like, all right, let me trace that, and then try to make something out of it. And every time I do, it always ends in tears. Like I can't trace anything. Like I I've tried over the last 5 or 10 years, and I just can't get that anything dynamic out of it, and it just never looks right, which is um which makes me feel kind of horrible in a way, because I'm like, oh man, I don't draw realistically. And there may be little things here and there, but I always think that, I'm going to draw this from this, or trace this and make it out of this, and it always ends up looking horrendous. Um, but for like training, I guess the one thing that I like more than anything else, as far as referencing stuff, is you go when you look at something, and then you become a better artist just because you looked at it, so I gave up. I like, if I want to go draw trees better, I'll just quickly Google some trees, and then I level up instantly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, trees are my nemesis. That's why I bring that up. Like, trees are the absolute worst thing that I draw.
Do you have to draw them to level up, or you just
I just
mentally
look at I
memorize them?
just look at them, and that's what I try to tell anybody who's trying to become a better artist.
Yeah.
Like, just quickly go look at an ear, go look at a tree, go look at a face, anything, and you'll be so much better once you go try and draw it.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite art style is what I call dollar bill art, and it's like the insane hatching and curvature of the lines, and line weights that go into contouring and kind of illustrating a figure.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some famous artist names from books way back, but that an insane hatching style of just drawing so many lines and just completely covering a figure with curved lines and,
Right.
and
Yeah.
hatching and stuff like that. I love it. I can't get enough of it. It's my favorite
The
art style in
the
the world.
classic example is Gustave Doré, who did
That's a good one. Yeah.
yeah. That was I don't know, 150 years ago, maybe
Yeah,
100
and
years ago.
I couldn't believe how old that style was whenever I'd really started appreciating it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that was just when illustration as a profession was being replaced by photography, I suppose. But they
oh,
were perfecting, well, between that and etching,
oh crap!
which is
Yeah,
sort of the opposite of ink. It's subtracting color instead of adding color. It's an interesting combination of. Well, I don't know. I've never done etching.
yeah.
I've tried a couple times. It
Oh
was sort
man,
of.
yeah. I remember. I always have delusions of grandeur of going and getting some like really dark gray or black paper and trying to shade out a figure, with in the reverse
Yeah.
style. Man, I think about that stuff all the time.
I don't know. I mean, Photoshop lets you do that these days, so that's a neat little trick. Um, Man, but
True.
that's interesting. So, your shading. Do you like shading, or do you tend to prefer silhouettes?
Oh man, there's something about um crosshatch shading that's just kind of consumed me lately. And I do like I start with just aiming for that confident line, you know, of just getting that figure in a silhouette. And you know, sometimes I'll draw a silhouette, but sometimes I'll detail things along the way as I'm thinking about what I'm going to do with that arm coming up, you know, to give myself a little more time to kind of just see the figure animated on the page. I'll just kind of detail out certain things and so it'll look better. I love shading. I love it. Like, I see, I've been getting away from more cross hatching shading, and I still do the cross hatching, but I'm going into more solid spotting of blacks, even though I'll cross hatch the crap out of those those areas to get them darkened to the point, you know, where they're black, just as like a little therapeutic measure of just self-abuse. But as it takes a lot longer to do certain things, but I do like a lot of shading, and I see, and if I had my way, I don't know if I'm the best at it, but I think that's one of the things that I'll probably be working on over the next like few decades is like lighting and shading and getting better at that. You know, whenever I draw smaller figures, the shading and definition on my faces really goes out the window. That's when I need to get like the smaller, and I need to focus on that more, you know, getting good shading and you know, just the eyelids, adding eyelids to a character, you know, it's just huge anymore.
Well, that's always one of the big catch-22s, is if you start shading a face, then the character automatically starts looking older.
That's very true. Yeah.
And especially with faces, if you make even the slightest mistake, it's like the whole picture is ruined. Because everyone knows what a face is supposed to look like, and you can accidentally jump into the uncanny valley by accident.
Yeah, it's so funny to see like that wacky jawline of the old superheroes from the 90s that came down from the ear and kind of crossed over the face and went into the chin. I tried doing that the other day, and I'm like, what is this? How did anybody get away with doing this? I couldn't get it to work. And you know, just drawing you know, a cheek line coming off the nose down to the edge of the mouth. I've been doing a lot of more spotting of blacks around the eyes, even on females lately. And where I thought I was going to completely demolish a drawing, it didn't turn out bad. But yeah, I think I got a lot of work to do on shading still. It's going to be, you know, I'm going to be 80 before I, you know, get there maybe.
Well, if you take so much pleasure in sketching, that's how you're going to discover it faster. If for anyone listening, like I always try to convince people that if you take pleasure in your practice, it's not practice. I actually don't draw for pleasure, and I think it's hamstrung me a lot. Like I just don't enjoy it, and if I don't know, like I don't like to show people my sketches, for instance, even though I don't know how to put it. I like it when they exist, but I don't like actually doing it, because I'm sitting there in front of, like, say I have a blank page in front of me. I'm staring at it like, what am I supposed to draw? So the next step for me is like, oh, I should go write a script so then I can draw something, because I need to give myself a reason to draw. I can't just make a character.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
It's funny. But let's see. So if you're practicing new techniques and you're happy to share your sketches, I mean, you're joking about being 80, but I'm sure you're going to discover a million new techniques like every week.
Well, it's so funny because I spoke with Adam Warren at a convention not too long ago, and he's, in my opinion, he's super famous. I mean, he's just done so much. He's the super American manga artist guy who he's done Gene 13, Dirty Pair, and his own creation, the book called Empowered. Yeah. I love his stuff, and I was talking to him at a convention. He's been around forever, and he was telling me kind of just what I was trying to say a minute ago, which is, you know, working on shading from an actual light source. Like a lot of people seem to have mastered that, and they do tutorials all over the internet, and he as comic book artists, we just sometimes we were trained to just draw this, this hard light on the edge of an arm, or on the chesticles. You draw a couple of circles and you fill in some black areas on. But he's like, man, I cannot figure out lighting for the life of me, and he's been drawing forever, and his books are completely drawn in pencil a lot of the time, and I mean super clean pencil. So what looked cool to me, anyways. Yeah, it's one of those things. He's probably influenced me the most in my artwork, even though our styles, you probably couldn't tell, but from 20 years ago, I never forget when I saw his work, and he actually drew in a comic book like really awesome looking hands and really awesome looking guns, and I was like, who is this guy drawing realistic guns? And it set me on a path, that I haven't come back from yet. So
if there's always, like, I always struggle with hands and feet, especially feet.
Oh yeah.
And I have this weird signature move that I'm not, because I don't know how to draw feet. I always seem to draw feet the same way. They do this weird flex. And it looks fun. It looks funny, and it looks like a foot. I guess when I reach a point where I tell myself, okay, people can tell that it's a foot, I'm going to move on. But there was a point where I just decided I'm going to just draw nothing but feet for like pages and pages in a sketchbook, until I got to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm comfortable enough doing this.
That's brutal.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's like working out, I suppose. Not that I would know anything about that, but if there's one muscle group that I'm really struggling with, it's not a bad idea to just do that nonstop until you're comfortable with it.
You want to know what's crazy that you bring that up? It's been, oh man, sorry, my phone's going on. I love drawing hands. I really, really love drawing hands. When you get some really good hands, it's like the best feeling in the world. But I mean, feet is very difficult. I've gotten better at feet recently, but the weirdest thing that's come up in my art development over the last few weeks is I've always liked, and I've always found it easier to draw, from the shin down to the foot, just like some baggy boots, some old boots. You just basically straight lines down, into some baggy boots, into like a boot or a foot, and I'm like, I love that. But the hardest thing in the world for me has been drawing shins into skinny ankles into a foot, and I'm like, it's the weirdest thing in the world. I'm just now coming around to like really attempting it and being satisfied with some of the results, but drawing a skinny ankle into a foot or a shoe or something like that, I never in my entire art career development messed around with that as much as I should have, and I feel like I'm getting some good results now at 39, but that was always the trickiest thing. And feet are very, very difficult. I mean, they're very difficult.
I wonder how much of this is muscle memory. Like, if your hand is used to going out at the ankle instead of in, you've trained your hand. It's like, I don't know, basketball or something. I'm really good at, let's say, getting a free throw from the left side, but if I'm on the right side, I miss all the time. And it's just, for some reason, my body is used to that angle or something like that.
Oh yeah, my development is exactly like that. If I don't use it, I'll lose it, or I have to just I have to really get into it and kind of redefine some of it. Yeah, that's how it goes for me. Muscle memory.
I mean, for any new person, what I always tried to tell them at the very beginning when they're trying to learn how to draw is just get your hand to obey you. That's the most important thing. Because I'm sure we can all have like really amazing images in our head, but if your hand doesn't listen to you, then I don't know. It's sort of like you're trying to train yourself to do multiple things at once, like building your mental library. You can do that without a pencil, like we said a few minutes ago.
Oh, yeah.
You just stare at a tree or something. Or I've even been experimenting with this is so stupid. Like I'll be walking around at the mall and then I'll see something interesting that I want to draw, but I'm not going
Uh-huh.
to sit down and actually draw it in public because I'm embarrassed. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
same, yeah,
have a I
same
have a
thing.
pen in my hand,
Oh
and I'll
crap!
kind of the pen is against my thigh, and I'm kind of like, okay, so if I'm going to draw that
Really?
angularly,
That's awesome. Holy cow, that's interesting, man. I
yeah,
like
because
that.
I'm trying to train my muscle memory, and I'm like, okay, my fingers are doing the motion as if I'm drawing that person's eye or something. Okay, fine,
Oh, dang, son, that's
but
wild.
it's still awkward.
You're a savant, man, in training. That's really good.
I can't. I don't know if it works or not, but yeah, it's you always want to walk around and I mean, building a mental library because I don't like using reference. For me, it's just another step that slows me down. That
Oh yeah, I will say this, like the more like I was saying, I reference for human figures, I use probably the least,
Hmm.
but reference for like cars or trees or buildings and stuff like that,
All right.
I really encourage people. Because if you're using reference for actual human figures, I think it's restricting in a way. So I haven't I mean, I look at things around me, and but I never look at human figure reference anymore, or I never look at human figure reference and then look down at my paper and then try to draw it. Like I'll look at it and study it for times, but I never look at it while I'm drawing. Because I want a really action oriented, dynamic figure that that's why we draw. To get exciting, different looking things. And I guess one other point that I would make for any other artists is the more and more I realize that if I draw smaller,
Hmm.
the anatomy becomes more correct. Or if I step back from my drawing and look at it from a distance, or look at or take my time on something and try to make sure this hand is the same size as this hand,
Hmm.
or just stepping back from a drawing and taking a few minutes and going doing something, coming back and looking at it will like help in huge ways. Like stepping back from, and that's what I tell people who want to learn to paint. Things are good from afar, even though they may be far from good. But if you look at them from a distance, uh you can really get some clarity, and you can see where your mistakes are from more
Hmm.
from
And
in
it's
my
easier.
experience.
They always say in game development, fail quickly. So if you're
That's
drawing small, if you're messing something up, it's easier to fix it.
very good. I never heard that. I love it. Like
Yeah.
that's
I mean, that's always been the biggest pain for me is I actually quit using pencils and ink for almost primarily ever. Like I'm all digital now, but the reason is that it's just speed. I get very frustrated when I
mm,
draw, like really frustrated and anxious. So I try to find that key. Like say I'm sketching, I say I'm looking for the image. I know what it's supposed to look like,
yeah.
and then I'm trying to get my hand to obey the image in my head, or I'm trying to find a better image. But I'm trying to get there as fast as possible so I can get to the fun part, which is, let's say, painting. Because then
Uh,
it's more relaxing. I know what the figure's going to look like, and now I'm just filling in details. And that's like Bob Rossing it. I like the Bob Ross part, but I get really anxious when I'm looking for the image.
oh yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. It's so satisfying to get to that point too,
Yeah.
man. It's so weird. I have such delusions that I'll get there eventually, and I really want to um end up getting like a tablet, because I focus on Photoshop right now, and all I have is a mouse and Photoshop. So I'm just mousing around Photoshop.
Yeah.
But I have all these really cool brushes that do these amazing things, and they just the speed, like you mentioned, uh,
Oh man, if
it's unrivaled.
it's a shame that we don't live closer, because I could give you like a half an hour breakdown. It's so
It changed my world.
it really is a game changer. Um, it's really disorienting at first. Shoot, dude, if you can get a good tablet, I'll teach you how to use it.
Well, it's if nothing else, like I don't know if I'll ever get away from sketching, that figure on paper. Because people are always like, let me know what kind of paper to use. I love big paper, and I have 11 by 17 regular copy paper. I
Mhm.
mean, it's so cheap. And you can go buy the 100-pound Bristol stuff, and I use that too. I'll usually get like a good figure or a good comic page, but I'll draw on the regular copy paper first. But I really, really would love to eventually get a tablet, get on board with all that stuff for like the later process, like painting and coloring. Like that's my dream right now.
I could tell you exactly what you should get.
Dang it!
Let me look.
You're gonna enable me. You're enabling me to.
I mean, it's honestly, it's like I'm handing you another sword to use in your arsenal. It's not. Well, let me just tell you what I would recommend, and you don't have to do anything with this.
Please, yeah, I'm sure other people who are listening would love to do that.
I have been using an old Intuos 5 Touch from Wacom, and I do not use the touch functions at all.
Oh crap!
Now some people prefer to use the tablet, just the tablet in front of them, and they don't use the keyboard. But I use both the keyboard with my left hand. I set it up in such a way.
Oh,
keyboard left hand and the tablet's in front of me with the right hand. And something that I didn't know at first was the mapping for the pen. You have to do a little bit of setup, so it's a little bit of a pain at first. But let's say I put down the pen in the top right corner of my tablet.
Yeah.
What you want is for your cursor to jump to that point on your monitor. And then if I pick up the pen and put it to the top or the bottom left corner, the cursor will be there on the bottom left.
Yeah.
So you're not pushing the cursor around. Some people might disagree with this, but I think that's the best way. And I use the really big tablet. I used to use a small one, but then I was realizing that, let's say I was making a stroke on the tablet that was an inch long or 2 inches long.
Yeah.
On my monitor, that translated to 4 inches long. So I was actually tricking my brain. I was training my brain. It's like anti-training. Because my brain was thinking like, wait, I'm making a small stroke, but it's making a big stroke in front of me. That's weird.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would say if you can, I think when I bought this like 7 years ago, it was $500. I bet it's way cheaper now. But it is the most important tool I've ever used in my whole setup here.
Man, I'll get to looking at them sometimes, and it's so wacky. I mean, there's some expensive ones out there, but like you're telling me, I mean, this is crazy that you're telling me this of all people, because I mean, I still have my cell phone from like 3 or 4 years ago. Like I don't need all the hot up to date stuff. I just need something, functional, and that's all I would use it for. I wouldn't corrupt it. If something was going to last for me, I would use it forever.
I think most tablet technology now, all you really need is pressure sensitivity. The one I have, and I think most of them now also have tilt sensitivity.
Oh crap.
So they know when you're tilting the pen and all that stuff, and there are some brushes that take advantage. But if you're just trying to learn how to use a tablet, honestly, you could get the cheapest model. I think it's called a Graphire. Same company, Wacom.
Intuos. Oh, Wacom. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Intuos I think is the fancy pants one, but you don't need that one.
Gotcha.
But anyway, the most important thing is you need pressure sensitivity, which all tablets have anyway. And you would want it to be as big of a surface as possible so that it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio with your monitor.
Oh, yeah.
And then all you have to do is, just use the pen tool or the pencil tool.
I would be zooming in like in and out like some kind of deranged person.
No, man, it's once you get used to the controls, like when your hand is tricked into thinking I'm drawing on a piece of paper, I'm looking up at the monitor, of course, but my hand is down. And it actually took a while to get used to that. But honestly, it feels so natural.
Oh, yeah. Just like anything. I mean, yeah, if you do something long enough,
honestly, it's if price is a problem, honestly, you shouldn't find one for more than 200 these days, probably.
Yeah, I would get so much done if because I have all these fancy brushes and stuff that I've put together that allow me to do so many amazing things across the page with just a couple of clicks. And I mean, these brushes today will do wacky stuff, and
Yes.
they'll lay down all kinds of ridiculousness. But yeah, that's in my future. I'm very this conversation is very, enlightening.
No, I'm like, I'm a pretty conservative guy when it comes to spending money. But I'm telling you, I guarantee, like, I'll pay for it if you don't like it. I'm so confident that it's going to change your life. Like, I'll give you the money if you don't like it. But that's how serious I am. Like, I'm not going to give you the money because you're going to love it. So
No, yeah, you're
yeah,
you're right, and there's no doubt I'm gonna love it. I've even I even really got into like wanting to. I want to do so many things, so often, and it's always wacky. I even started 3D modeling and teaching myself how to 3D model the other day.
yeah,
And
dude.
you use those tablets to 3D model too,
Yes.
and I'm just like, oh gosh, because I think about so many things, and it was like almost a year ago I started teaching myself some Blender and some ZBrush and stuff like that because I wanted, as much as I wanted do drawing and comics and stuff like that. Another point I guess I like to make is I got one of the coolest things I ever found was there's 3D models and websites you can go look at figures,
Yep.
and you can rotate around the figure on the actual website and just look at certain things, cars, uh, guns, figures, humans, like whatever you want. And as much as I wanted to, you can draw from that type of stuff and get, because for me, I became so obsessed with getting just doing really cool angles, whether it was like an extreme uh, um, shot from above or below. I hardly ever drew any figures sorry, that were just straight on anymore. So I had to like reteach myself how to draw
Hmm.
level figures. But I think as far as like other influence and stuff like that, people should check out 3D. As much as I was trying to do 3D because I wanted to do statues of my figures or like 3D printing, it's like tablet use and 3D printing and all this other stuff. I have so many delusions of wanting to do so many different things. I easily get obsessed about stuff, and you offering, I know I would love it. Like there's no doubt. I would consume me. It would absolutely consume me.
Well, honestly, what it is a time saver, and 3D as well.
Yeah.
Learning new techniques, especially in comics, because the profession of comics is all about speed, I would
Mm,
argue.
very,
We
very
can
true.
make a nice pinup, a nice cover image, but I would think what we're really trying to do is bang out those pages as fast as humanly possible without taking shortcuts that are unethical. Let's say, I, I don't believe in copying and pasting panels, for instance.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's my thing. But
Oh, I agree. Yeah, that's egregious, man, at
well,
times.
it is a time saver. One can argue.
Yeah,
But
at
anyway,
times. Yeah.
so there are digital tricks, let's say, that I might employ in Photoshop that I don't consider unethical, where nobody would care or notice. So I
Right.
will use
Yeah.
those tricks, like especially with penciling. Like I'll draw a really nice face, let's say, and I really like the eye and the nose and everything, but the
Mm.
placement is weird. So I'll just take the selection tool and just move the nose like a few millimeters to the side.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
I
like,
mean, I
why should I redraw the nose? It looks good. I just want to move it.
I do. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I kind of like scribble on the cheap copy paper, but it's 11 by 17 copy paper.
Yeah.
I'll get the figures needed down, and then I'll just light box, and I'll go straight to inks on the light box. It
Hmm.
saves me so much time, and I'll move the figure over an inch or less in the panel, and I'll position the figures where I want them on the panel because having to erase something on the actual comic page when you
Yeah.
could just I mean, yeah, it's kind of like my cheating measure, but yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I would do that all day, every day.
I mean, there is no rule. Like, there's no comics authority that's going to come down on any of us for saying you're not drawing in the traditional way. Like, if I could deliver a book to someone and they enjoy it, that's all that matters.
Very true.
But anyway, all this is just my long-winded way of saying there's no harm in trying out and learning new techniques to save time, because that means you get to draw more comics, and
Oh
the
yeah.
whole world is a better place when we can draw more comics.
Yeah, that's very true. To being able to produce and get it out faster. I even even the scanned images that I'll draw. Sometimes I'll take those little facial features, and even though I've drawn them and scanned them in digitally, I'll take them and move them over
Yes.
to make them look more anatomically correct. So I mean, yeah, I totally get it. I
There's
know
no
it's a
shame in it.
speed thing. I would if I could get faster.
No, I mean, really, the only reason for anyone listening that I would not recommend doing that is if you're still learning and you want
Oh,
to train.
that's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you want to train yourself to do things properly, let's say. But once you're at a certain level and you're confident that, you know, you're comfortable in your style and you know what you want to do, it's like, what's the point of redrawing the entire figure from scratch, the entire page from scratch? Just go into Photoshop and fix it. Who cares?
Exactly. Exactly. Like even things that I'll mess up, I'll do that too. And I guess that's a really good point you make. And as far as like discussing how fast it'll make you, the only other thing that keeps me or causes me to hesitate to actually start going and drawing in actual programs on tablets and stuff like that is you you'll be missing out on like an original art sale, and
That's
that's
true.
the only other thing. And there's nothing wrong with doing limited prints, and like I'm not saying anything's wrong either way, but people, there's still a lot of people that appreciate original art,
Yes.
and that's another consideration that comes to mind whenever I think about converting over. But but that's another thing. I'm so scared to actually go and marker up one of my drawings. You'll rarely ever catch me. I mean, one out of 200 drawings, if someone begs me or to color something, like I'll try and throw some markers or some colored pencils down on an actual drawing.
Like Copics or something.
Yeah, Copics, anything. Like I'm all like pencil and ink.
Is it that you're not comfortable with color or you feel like you might make a mistake?
Yeah, I will make a mistake.
Okay.
Like, I need undo function bad when it comes to coloring.
Well, that's a great opportunity to learn Photoshop. You can make unlimited mistakes.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I was never ever comfortable with color until I started experimenting digitally. And
Oh yeah, dude, your color palette is like nothing I've ever seen.
I don't know what I'm doing. The only reason I can experiment is because I just click on a few things and it's like, oh, maybe this scene looks better with some green over here. And then I just adjust the colors until I'm like, yeah, that looks cool.
I mean, yeah, I would like it's very cool. I always covet, people's color palettes and how they work in certain things, but yours is so great looking, and it's like but I'm unfamiliar with a lot of stuff out there anyways, and I don't really keep track of artists and names, but I've never seen anything quite like what you're working with over there, color palette wise.
Man, that
and
fills
and
me.
just being able to like take what I look at your stuff too is you can actually draw hair and lines and do things, and whenever you start getting into these programs, you don't even have to draw the line and color it. You just draw the hair or the and stuff, and that's the coolest thing in the world to
Yeah.
me is losing lines at times. I would love such a cool thing too.
Yeah, I mean, what I really do you know the difference between the pencil tool and the brush tool in Photoshop?
N- no, not at all. I mean, I
Oh.
know they exist.
Oh. Well, basically, it's that, well, let me put it this way. You get the basic tool where you can make a stroke that looks like a pen, and then you can do pressure, so you can feather it
Yeah.
make the width, so I'm pressing really lightly for the edge of the hair, and then I'm pressing hard for the inside of the hair, let's say. And you do that, I don't know, 20 times, and you have a full head of hair, let's say. Then you can select the hair and change the colors around it. You can add a gradient.
That's
And it's not as sexy as, manually drawing every piece of hair, but I mean, the computer does a lot of work, and I think that's what a lot of people maybe get turned off with color, especially with digital coloring, is it loses a human touch to think like, oh, a computer did this. Like, it's the difference between a 3D movie and a hand-animated movie from the old days.
Yeah, but they have so many wild textured brushes out now that are just, they're mind-blowing. I mean, but I like that. I mean, I can appreciate so much about so many different approaches that people take.
It saves time. I mean, I go back to Bob Ross, for instance. What did he do with those little fan brushes? He would just like chop, 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 and he would make trees, clouds, and all that stuff. And it doesn't matter what technique he used to get there. It's just, it looks like a cloud. It looks good.
I agree. Yeah, it's so wacky when it comes to painting. Like you never know. Like you get into painting and you think, oh, I got all these different size brushes, I'm going to produce a masterpiece. But like in painting more than anything, you have to step away from your drawing and look at it. Whenever I painted, it's the best tool that I ever used in painting was the palette knife. And it's not even a brush. It's a stupid putty knife or a palette knife, and you have different shapes of those things. And they're the coolest things in painting ever.
Do you use it the way that Ross does with the, you ball up a little bit on the edge and then pull it down, scrape it down?
Yeah, you can scrape it, and depending on the texture of the canvas, you get cool little effects. I mean, you could do lines easier, with palette knife. And it's just so ridiculous. But yeah, it's just the tool, I guess. And it's things that I've come to know in my old age, is that if you want to focus on something and you want to experiment with something, is no matter how scared you are, you just know that, the more time you put into it, the more comfortable you'll get, and it'll become second nature eventually.
Well, what's the downside to trying, really?
No, exactly.
What, you're going to get embarrassed? Who's going to make fun of you?
Man, you got me really wanting to see these rare sketches that you never show anybody anymore. But maybe I'll harass you for those another day.
Well, that's the funny thing with artists, is like I could go through anyone else's sketchbook for days and drool, and then I could not care less about my own sketches. But yeah, we can exchange sometime if we're ever in the same area. I'd love to take a look at your stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so cool because things that I hesitate putting up, as far as sketch wise, and I just put up this sketch the other day, and it got more likes on it than anything. And it was the leanest, most simple, most like crude looking thing you could have imagined. But I got like 700 likes on it in a day. And people, they're like, yeah, man, it's so crazy. The less line work. And that's where I'm starting to hesitate recently, is I'm like, man, should I go, more minimalist? Because people, like, sometimes they just really like a good outline figure, and some general sketching to give you the idea. And then their mind will see creativeness, and it'll get their mind going, and they really like that place they're in, that the sketch, lets them wander around. And simple line sketches, people appreciate that stuff. It's been a really weird year, and not to mention a really weird week. I mean, it's always exciting producing art.
Social media gives us an opportunity to see what would resonate with readers. It's not always what we think it is. Like, exactly. I could spend days, hours on a single piece and be like, oh, this is great, and nobody cares. But then some piece of junk that I throw up there, everyone, 2 million likes and all that stuff. It's like, I guess I should do more of these, or is the universe trying to tell me something?
That's it, man. That's it.
I'm happy to meet them in the middle. Maybe I can do things that I like and that they like at the same time, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. But I mean, you got to keep it fresh. You have to also like what you do. So there has to be some middle ground, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I'm very interested in asking about your experience with the American production pipeline and also about your current projects and how we can
Oh,
find them.
cool. Man, it's kind of interesting. As far as production stuff, I'm gonna guess that what you're asking is like the printing process, or just maybe everything in between getting the images finalized for print.
Sure.
I do a lot of that. I designed and I mess with the text on the covers to my Punchline book, which is out through Antarctic Press and in stores if anybody wants to go check it out. It's uh it's called Punchline, and Antarctic Press is the publisher. But I even told them, I'm like, please just give me your logo. I want to put everything on the cover, and because I kind of get obsessed with the positioning of things, the logo and where the company logo goes, where's the title of the book goes, the numbering, the credits and the names on the book. I kind of I'll go millimeters, out of place, and it'll either look so wrong to me or so right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of obsess about that stuff a little bit, but um, uh, I love preparing images in Photoshop, and I like taking colorists' work, and I'll throw some extra little splatter on it or texture on it. I love doing that stuff. Uh, and I'm learning all about RGB and CMYK, for print, for mass print, and just regular print, for stuff. So stuff getting washed out because you did something in RGB and it needs to be CMYK. So whenever you have to convert it, things will look a little washed out. It's there's so much to it, but I've gotten sketchbooks printed at my local print shop down the street, and they look amazing, and we've gotten stuff printed in China and shipped over from other printers, and I hear that's a really tough spot to be in right now. But
Yeah.
there's I've spent a lot of time doing prints for my conventions, uh, you know, getting certain things printed up close by, and or can be nice. There's lots of headaches that have come along with that. I've gone through like half a dozen printers here and there. I won't get into all that, but man, I could ramble on about the process of getting that stuff up and running. But um, I'm really shocked at how often people are coming to me and being like, "Hey, do you have just like these drawings in just the line art anymore?" So I'm doing a lot more line art prints, and even printing whole issues of certain books. I mean, if anybody's interested, I'm really proud of this book that's an Indiegogo campaign right now. It's called Seicho 66, and it's spelled Seicho 66, and it's on Indiegogo right now. There's 10 days left. One of the perks in the campaign is you can get a book just printed in black and white, and sometimes people love that. I love just black and white artwork too, and I love all things color. But definitely if anybody's interested in what I got currently, Punchline is out in stores now, and if they don't have them, they can order them, or you can look on eBay and stuff like that. But Indiegogo Seicho 66 right now. Check it out. Yeah, and if you want to look for a lot of my other little sketches here and there, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Weldon Art. And I post on YouTube every now and then. I need to get more regular with that. Just Matthew Weldon on YouTube, I believe.
And you're often on Drawn and Quartered, right?
Oh yeah. I try. Yeah, it's really wacky to be able to. I don't like missing those shows, because over the last year, or it's probably been well over a year now, I mean, having that that kind of space to really just get critically productive. You have 2 hour time limit, and you get a theme, and you draw something up in that 2 hour time limit, and then it's pens and pencils down, and I love it. And I've really leveled up since I've been interacting with those guys. Yeah, it's very wholesome, and just people, you can look at that type of thing, and you can appreciate it for so many different things, like the competitive nature of the show, the uh, the critiquing of the artwork, the little straw poll that goes up that allows people to vote, and then depending on how high you get in the ranks, but for nothing else, I do that show, and I've done that show, and I've noticed a huge difference in the level of my artwork, and how I've gotten to places that I'm happier with, because it's, you draw more, you get better, and as I've done that, I've gotten a lot better, I think.
Yeah. It's a funny thing. When you test yourself, you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
I find that, I mean, my biggest thing is I don't like to compete against other people. My thing is I want to try to always do better than I did yesterday, let's say.
There you go. Yeah.
But, that doesn't always mean I'm going to make a masterpiece every time. But I still, my criteria is, am I proud of this? Could I have done better? What did I learn from this?
Exactly.
I mean, you said you used to game. Did you play fighting games back in the day?
Oh my goodness, man. Fighting games. Like,
we could do another hour on that, I'm sure.
It's so wacky that you even say that. I mean, there's so many different games out there between RPGs and first person shooters. And I got into a number of them, but being an artist, I don't even have time to hardly read any comic books anymore, play games, do anything else, especially if you're trying to make a living at it. But I just grabbed a fighting game that I haven't played in 10 years, just like a month or two ago, and it's called Tekken 7. And I used to love Marvel vs. Capcom 2, man. And that's why I just posted some drawings of.
I saw your drawing of King. That's why I'm asking.
Bro, King is like, he's just so flashy and flamboyant, man. It's so nuts. I love it. Like, I can't even start wandering anymore onto it, other than, that used to be my jam.
Okay. Like, I actually had the same problem the other day.
It is a problem at times.
I don't want to go deep into it either, because it's going to be another hour. But I used to play Tekken since middle school. God. And I recently picked up 7 again just for fun, and I love playing as Leo. And
oh my goodness! Yeah.
All right, so we'll talk about this another time, or we're gonna get into it deep. But so anyway, the reason I bring up fighting games is because I lose all the time, but I also win enough that I tell myself that the only time I really lose a fight is when I don't learn something.
Oh yeah.
So that's a tip for any artist, is actually winning all the time is bad for you. So I would go into the competitive scene. Like, I used to play Street Fighter 5, 4. And there were times when I would go to like Japan. There was one time I went to Japan or New York City and play some of the best players in the world. And they actually avoided me because I sucked compared to them.
Oh, crap.
And I realized that was because I was making them play worse by, like, they weren't learning anything by just stomping me. And I was giving them, they were developing bad habits by playing against me.
Interesting.
So the lesson there is, as we're drawing, like, try to do things that you're really uncomfortable with. And if a drawing is too easy, find a way to make it hard. Because then we're not learning unless we're really challenged. And that's why Drawn and Quartered is a great challenge, because there's a little bit of a gentle embarrassment factor.
Yeah.
Like, by the time the hour mark comes along, I'm like telling myself, George, you're going to be very embarrassed if you don't do whatever you're doing. Just do it faster, do it better. And then I'm realizing, like, I don't mean to ramble, I'm so sorry, but by the hour mark,
the best lesson that could be conveyed of all, like, I think. Yeah.
Sorry?
No, this is probably like the best lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Like, from everything we've discussed so far, I think.
Because there are things that I do that I have bad habits when I'm by myself drawing, just like a page, let's say, where I'm taking way too long. Time is my biggest enemy when I'm drawing. But then when I do shows like Drawn and Quartered, I'm like, wait a second, I can draw really good pictures really fast. And what is the difference? Mm-hmm. And then I'm realizing that I'm just getting in my own way, thinking about, like, oh, I have all the time in the world. I'm just going to make a masterpiece that's going to take me 16 hours. But I say, wait a second. Instead of doing a masterpiece, why don't I just do a piece that's like 80% in an hour and then just leave it alone? And
exactly.
And in the past like 6 months, let's say we say leveling up, I've told myself like most people don't notice when my output is 80%, but my speed is like tripled. It's that last 20% that takes up all my time, and it also makes me tired, and it takes away the freshness of the art. I get frustrated and I don't want to draw anymore.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's such a great idea. And there's also, for anyone who wants to draw, there's a fan edition of Drawn and Quartered. You should join.
It's going on right now. I'll probably jump on
it's Thursday night. You're right.
After this.
Yeah, you guys have to check that out. Oh man, it's been really refreshing talking about this, man. I could do this for another few hours. We got to talk about it.
Yeah, if I agree. Like there's so many topics that were left untouched that,
Well, I'll tell you what, if you end up getting that tablet, and if you want to sort of, I don't know, if you need any tips or like a little walkthrough, a tutorial or anything, I would be glad to do another hour with you and just like walk through it.
Yeah, man, that would be huge. That would be, I would feel so much better about that. I'll hit you up before I make any nutty, wacky decisions. So
absolutely.
I really appreciate everything, man.
No, don't spend too much, but size and pen pressure, that's all that matters, I would say.
I agree with the size, definitely, and pen pressure.
Yeah, but there's a lot of bells and whistles that don't matter. Anyway, but since we're going, is there anything else you want to plug or any farewells to everybody for now?
No, man, I appreciate the time to really get the mind going and to to wander around at the beginning of my little journey and to more current stuff. So yeah, I just really appreciate everybody's interest in my work. I love seeing other people's work. I wish I could keep up with everybody's stuff. I love the interaction with others who comment on my stuff, and I love seeing their stuff too. So I mean, I wish I could keep up with everything, but I'm off to the next thing. There's so much to be creative about and so much to look forward to. So
yeah, man. Hey. Well, you're in the pro circuit now. You have to be in production mode. But
that still sounds so foreign to me, but I appreciate that.
That's all right. I mean, you've got to strike while the iron's hot. I mean, you got many good years of production ahead of you if you want. But anyway, so everyone, I'm leaving the links below to find more of Matt's stuff. I encourage you all to follow him on Twitter and just absorb his stuff.
Definitely.
But yeah, man, please look into the tablet stuff. Let me know if you have any questions, and I would be happy to help you.
You're going to be my go-to cat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My pleasure.
Thanks for spending the time, man. I appreciate it.
Of course, dude. You're helping me out. Come into my silly little channel. Okay, so I'll stop recording right now. I'll just say bye to you offline. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I'll talk to you next time.